Hey folks, welcome back. I'm Brendan from Blue Light, and tonight I'm going to explore a couple of really interesting questions for you. We all know about the 20,000 uplift of police officers that Boris Johnson announced. I'm going to talk to you tonight about some maths, and those of you who know me know that maths is just not my strong subject, but I'm going to explore why the numbers associated with this 20,000 uplift are so important, and why this challenge to the police service might just be an impossible one for some forces, many forces, all forces. So pin your ears back, folks, and see what you think about my math. Please do comment below if you've got any thoughts on it. Just in case any of you are thinking, who is this guy and what's he talking about? Well, over the past several years, I've been supporting people for the police recruitment process for England and Wales and Scotland and Gibraltar and Australia and America, and I've been following closely the recruitment practices of every force in the country. Over 4,000 people are now in the police service as a result of my support. Many of them may have got there on their own steam, I don't know, but what I provided was the absolute confidence that they needed to approach each part of the recruitment process. By the way, if I can share with you that there's 43 different versions of police recruitment across England and Wales. Every force does recruitment completely differently. Anyway, over to the numbers. So here we are, and these numbers come from a couple of different sources. The main one being Parliament. So Parliament in March 2019, or actually after March 2019, but accurate as per 2019 in March, provided Parliament with a load of data about police retention and recruitment. So I've been doing some number crunching around that. So as of March 2019, there's 123,171 police officers in the Home Office forces of England and Wales. This does not account for BTP, CNC and the Ministry of Defence Police. Just the 43 Home Office forces, and this does not account for full-time equivalents neither, which lowers the figure. But that's just the number of police officers that exist. Now if we add 20,000 to that, simple maths, 143,171 police officers. Takes us back to where the police service was in around 2010. So it's kind of like a reboot, if you like, but that 20,000 uplift is over the next 3 years. One of the things that we need to account for, though, is the number of people leaving. So this can go up and down. I mean, I can't predict the future, but as of March 2019, 8,727 officers had left the service. So I'm going to multiply that by 3 to get 26,181 police officers. So we need to take a look at what that means. Because we add 20,000 to the 26,181 that need to be recruited just to stay static where we are now, just to remain at 123,171, the service would need to recruit 26,181 police officers over the next 3 years. So I'm going to add that to the 20,000, which gives me a figure of 46,181 police officers that are going to need to be recruited over the next 3 years. Now, in one of my earlier YouTube videos, I mentioned that there's a sort of for 1 in every 10 across the country, candidates actually succeed in the recruitment process. Interestingly, that was quoted by some very clever people from some big organisations on LinkedIn and on Twitter. Can I share something with you? That 1 in 10 just came off the top of my head. Perhaps they've had the same sort of top of their head thoughts on what the actual data tells them, but I thought I'd better dig into that and just check whether 1 in 10 is actually right. It's wrong. So for every 8 people that apply, and it seems to waver between 7 and 8 according to data from the National Police Chiefs Council, 1 will succeed. So I'm going to take 8 there and multiply that 46,181 by 8, which equals 369,448 applicants to the police service over the next 3 years. Divide that by 3 and we then get 123,149 applicants. So that's 123,149 people need to apply to join the police service. If we take that 1 in every 8 are successful, and that's nationally. I mean, it's different right across the country. Metropolitan Police, 4 out of every 5 are successful. West Yorkshire Police, if we take a look at them, and this data is about a year or 2 old, but only 4% are successful. So 1 in 25 are successful in the recruitment process. Now, I know that's shifting sands and it's always going to change, but it just goes to show the variation from one part of the country to another. So here's some interesting numbers for you as well. I started number crunching into the future and thinking, I wonder what it's going to be like. I wonder what the service is going to feel like in terms of length of service. So if all of this is successful, by the way, and if the pledge hits the mark and the 20,000 uplift does actually happen and 7,000 of them aren't sort of moved over towards the National Crime Agency, as has been reported in the press just recently, what that's going to mean is by the end of 2023, 32% of all police officers in England and Wales, excluding BT, PCNC and the MOD, will have less than 3 years service. Yes, you heard that right. And please challenge my math at any time. But by the end of 2023, 32%, that's almost a third of all police officers in the country, will have less than 3 years service. Gets even more interesting. If we take the current rate of people that are leaving, 8727 every year, I mean, that could go up, it could go down. I mean, I don't know, I can't predict the future, but if we take that as being a static figure, by the end of 2025, 44.5% of all police officers will have less than 5 years service. That's almost half of all the police service in England and Wales by the end of 2025 will have less than 5 years service. Oh my goodness. Are we ready for that? Is anyone asking the question about what it's going to be like? Has anyone got a vision for what that's going to feel like in terms of organisational development and the requirements of the OD practices within forces, if indeed you do have some, on the workforce, on recruitment, on retention, on a whole wide range of issues. So, over the next week or so, I'm going to produce some further videos. Because one of the things that struck me was the recruitment campaigns and methods being used by many forces at the moment are the same ones that they were using decades ago. They're just on the internet. To give you an example, one force that started recruiting last week had that many pages I had to scroll through before I could even start the application form. I would have lost interest completely. Lost interest completely. I'll go into a little bit more depth about why I think their marketing campaign is a train wreck in that video. So I had to go through 6 pages before I could even start the application form, and each one of those pages was full of blah, 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 blah. Listen, can I share with you, Generation Z, the people who were born from 1995 onwards, tend to have, not going to say they have, but tend to have a really short attention span. They are not going to be interested. They'll have lost interest, the will to live, by the time they get to that point. More about that in another video. Now, there's a lot of talk about the number of tutors, trainers, kit, space in police stations, lockers. I mean, that's cropped up. Where am I going to put all my stuff? That perennial problem in the police. Here's another conundrum for you, which I'll explain more in another video. Supervision. So by the end of 2023, 1/3 of all police officers in the country will have less than 3 years service. This is going to have a massive impact on sergeants and inspectors because, according to the National Police Chief's own data, a number of forces, a large number of forces, are finding it really difficult to promote quality candidates into those ranks. And they describe it as challenging, particularly challenging. And one of the reasons why is because the standard is not being met. Well, when's the time to start doing something about that standard, folks? I'd suggest now. How are you investing in the constables that are joining now to ensure that if the career path they want is promotion, that you're going to meet their needs to ensure that by 2025, they're going to be your sergeants and inspectors, because these are going to be some of the more senior officers in the country with 5 years service. Those who are joining now are going to have, they're going to be your sergeants and inspectors. So what are you doing to focus on their needs and develop them now? Entry points. We've seen some very diverse entry points. I'm going to make a prediction here that we're going to have to start getting really imaginative about entry points. If we think direct entry detective and direct entry inspector and superintendent is innovative, well, if we take a look at the armed services and take a leaf out of their book, we're not innovative at all. We are really not that innovative. So where are our direct entry cyber police officers? Where are our direct entry firearms officers? Where are our direct entry public protection officers and RPU officers? We're going to have to start thinking a little bit more imaginatively about our entry points, apart from loading up response with lots of officers very junior in service. Retention. I'm not hearing much about retention. Out of that 8,727 officers that are leaving every year, 27% of them are leaving of their own volition. They're resigning, and the bulk of them have got 0 to 15 years service, and that's according to the police chief's data. 27% are leaving. Are you okay with that? Do you even know, as a police force, why 27% of your officers are leaving? Now, I know you do surveys of those people who are leaving, but, honestly, do they really, at that point, they've already decided. How many forces out there have got itchy feet surveys? So when someone's starting to get itchy feet, thinking there might be something better for me out there, what are you doing about it? Because those numbers I talked about before are huge. I mean, over 120,000 people are going to need to apply to join the police. I'll put this into perspective. Unemployment is at 1.3 million. Employment is at its highest rate since comparable records began, and unemployment is at its lowest rate since comparable records began. And that's all according to the Office for National Statistics. The national pay levels are higher, on average, than the police service. So please tell me, how are we going to get this number of people applying to join? One of the ways we may be able to make it easier is by improving our retention rates. So I'm going to do another video on retention and my thoughts on that. That 123,000 I talked about that we've currently got excludes the long-term absences. Now, according to the data provided to Parliament, there's about 5,000 officers who are on long-term absences. It doesn't break it down, but my guess is they're not all on parental leave. My guess is there's a huge number of those officers who are on long-term sick, and I feel for them. I was a police officer for 28 years, and there's been many a time when I've felt like I've been at breaking point. I've got to say, some forces are doing some incredible things now about ensuring the well-being of police officers, but it's not that consistent. I'm not sensing it, I'm not buying that it's absolutely consistent. What are we doing to ensure that we try and reduce that long-term absence? Not because 5,000 is a shocking number. Well, it is shocking, because it's shocking that many police officers are in a position where they don't feel as though they're capable to work for whatever reason. 5,000. Lastly, BME representation. About 10 years ago, the BME representation, black minority ethnic representation across police forces, and I know it's not just about BME, it's also about sexual orientation, about diversity of thought, age diversity. There's a whole range of things that need to go into that sort of representation of society, including also the gender balance in the police service. But one of the things that's often discussed is BME representation. About 10 years ago, it's 4% of all police officers. Now I do believe it's about 7%. No, I don't believe it. That's what the data tells us. About 7% of all the police service identify themselves as BME. Whereas the figure that's often banded around is 14%. That actually, out of the population of the England and Wales, 14% of the population identify themselves as BME. I'm going to do a video on this because we've got this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity here to try and redress the balance. And I believe it can be done without the sort of 50-50 legislation that I've seen suggested. But we seem to be sleepwalking into a massive problem that's only going to manifest itself in 2030, 2040, when we're locked into a police service that is still not representing the communities that they're a part of. And that 14% figure, by the way, folks, is completely out of date. That's according to census data from 2011. And I'm going to talk in this video that I'm going to do about BME representation, about how shockingly poorly we really understand our communities. Now, some forces out there may say, oh, we absolutely understand them, but I'm not sure. I mean, I work with police forces at this moment in time around problem solving and community engagement, and some of the intensive work that we've been doing has led us to understand far more about communities, than what the stats tell us. Because by my best guesstimation from looking at data that's knocking around, it's nothing like 14% anymore. It's probably 20% plus, which means that if the service is aiming for a target of 14%, by the time we have the next census, which isn't far off, it's already out of date. You're chasing a target that you're never going to hit by doing the same recruitment campaigns and methods that you're doing now. If you continue to do what you've always done, don't be surprised when you get the same result. So, BME representation, I think, is something which I'm seeing some officers talk about at the senior level on Twitter and such like, but I'm not sure if you really appreciate the enormity of the challenge, especially when we look at what the data is really telling us about the makeup of the communities in some of our cities especially. So folks, those are some of the videos you've got to look forward to. Why am I doing these videos? Well, I want to share with you some of the things that I've discovered, because you know, as far as I'm concerned, in terms of police recruitment, I probably know more than most people. Actually, I probably know more than a lot of people. My knowledge and understanding of police recruitment practices has been developed over several years of being in this sector and just working towards this. Over 4,000 people are now in the police service as a result of my support. I've got a Facebook support group for police recruitment which has got over 7,000 members in it. That's over 7,000 people, the majority of them wanting to join the police. And can I share with you now, their biggest bellyache is about this, your recruitment campaigns and methods, which when I look at some of the stories that emerge from it, and okay, I take some of them with a pinch of salt, they're absolutely shocking. Must do better. And so one of the things that I'm going to be doing a little bit of work around, hopefully in the future, is retention and recruitment. So I suppose I'm putting this out there to say, look, I've got something to say, I've got something to share, and it's based on my knowledge and understanding of this sector throughout several years and seeing what works. So I'm seeing some forces doing outstanding recruitment campaigns that really appeal to Generation Z, that are going to capture their imagination. They've got a hook, a story, and a call to action. And it's really simple. It's really simple. But anyway, more about that in that video. So if you'd like to find out a little bit more, I'm going to put a link to my website below if you're watching this on Facebook or YouTube or LinkedIn. And my email address, please do let me know, or please do comment. If you think I've got it all wrong, let me know. If you think I'm barking up the wrong tree, let me know. If you want to challenge me about any of this on the future videos, please do let me know. So until next time, folks, I shall speak to you soon. Bye-bye for now.